The probationer got upset and said,
"Yeah, it's f***ing meth and a gun. Arrest me, I don't give a fuck."
Turns out the police officer found a huge dildo. Wow. Good day, folks. This is We Ask Reddit, bringing you multiple answers to very specific questions. Curious to see how people answer these questions? Then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Ready yourselves, cause Reddit is asking, police officers of Reddit, what was your "they could have gotten away with it if they had kept their mouth shut" moment? Now, if you're ready, let's begin. I had a car pass me once. Passenger hangs the upper half of his body out of the passenger side window with his middle finger in the air while screaming, "F*** the police!" He had my attention for the seatbelt violation. I got behind the car and ran the registration. Registration is suspended. Registered owner's driver's license is attached to the registration, and his license is suspended. Registered owner also has 2 warrants for retail theft. I stopped the car, and they both started with the free speech thing, and how I can't stop them for giving me the finger or swearing, which is 100% correct. When I pointed out that I can, however, stop them for the passenger not wearing a seatbelt and for the registration violation, suddenly they got quiet. Driver got arrested for a suspended license and his warrants, and the passenger got himself a citation. The driver's vehicle got impounded. Moral of the story? Tell your passengers to shut their mouths. Had the guy not been a moron, his buddy would have been homeward bound. Not a cop, but a public defender. Had a client who made a long statement that didn't help her case, but the judge was letting her go without setting bail. Before leaving the courtroom, however, I was informed that police from another precinct were coming to pick her up, and she'd be held until they did. They didn't get her until much later, but I told her to absolutely not say anything to them, to keep her mouth shut. The next day, I go to do her arraignment, and I get the notice of any statements, which started with,
"My lawyer told me not to say anything, but this is what happened,"
and proceeded to admit a variety of crimes. It was frustrating to say the least. Whoa, she is every lawyer's worst nightmare. Not a police officer, but I do know of this house in my local village that was a notorious drug den. The police came to search the place but couldn't find anything. As they were leaving, the lovely owner yelled at them that they should have brought the drug dogs. So yeah, they came back a few days later with the drug-sniffing dogs and found a huge amount of drugs hidden away. Absolute morons. Why the cops even forgot to bring them the first time though? If I was the one planning the raid, my thinking would have been, yeah, dogs. That sounds like a great idea. I was asked to keep peace while 2 probation officers searched a guy's house. Before everyone gets upset, in most jurisdictions, you have to submit to a search of your person and your home if you're on probation. During the search, a police officer lifted the probationer's mattress and said monotonously, "Wow." The probationer got upset and said,
"Yeah, it's f***ing meth and a gun. Arrest me, I don't give a fuck."
Turns out the police officer found a huge dildo. But after the guy opened his mouth, the police officer lifted the mattress more and found a bunch of individually wrapped grams of meth and a Glock 17. The police officer said that seeing the dildo was enough for him to ignore the mattress, but because the guy said something, he kept looking. That guy's attitude and his need to open his mouth got him 10 years in prison. What an absolute twit. I'm pretty sure the cop was just gonna ask, "Wow, you been keeping busy, Dave?" You know, like the awkward guy he is. Not me, but my boyfriend. Boyfriend's working overnight when a guy comes through town doing 35 miles per hour in a 25 miles per hour road. My boyfriend pulls the guy over and asks for his documentation. License, registration, insurance. Guy flips open his glove box, snatches his documents out, and snaps the glove box close super fast. Boyfriend laughs and says, what do you have in there? Guy gets a little sheepish and says, registration, insurance, little bit of weed. Boyfriend gets confused. What? Guy coughs and says, registration, insurance, and a little bit of weed? Boyfriend laughs again and says, seriously? Can I see? Guy got a slap on the wrist for being honest and having a very small amount of weed. Was that a humble brag? And he did it to a cop? The absolute mad lad. Okay, so we had a DUI accident where a guy kept driving straight into the woods, into a tree because his GPS was predicting a future street. He walked back to his hotel room and left his check and papers in the car. So we go to his hotel room and knock on the door. He didn't really have to answer, but he did. He was clearly drunk. I asked him if he had anything to drink since the accident. He did not have to answer. Or he could have told us that he drank after the accident. But he said, no, I haven't had anything to drink since the accident. And where I'm from, you have 24 hours to report a property damage as only accident. So it wasn't even a hit and run. So as I'm locking the guy up, he tells me that he's a lawyer. I told him, I hope you're not a defense attorney. But in his defense, he was drunk. What did this guy drink if he casually walked away from a car accident and back to the hotel room? I say vodka. Yeah, vodka does that to you. I was the one that might have gotten away with it, but the cop pulled me over and says, I clocked you at 86. Actually, I was going 85. I had the cruise control on. Yeah, that's still over the posted speed limit of 75. Oh, yeah, I guess it is. I know what I'm about, son. Don't try to tell me I was going faster. You sounded like, oh, I'm going to jail. Let this be a lesson, kids. Always check the speed limit sign on the roads. A cousin of a friend of mine travels around the state to take in deadbeat dads. Gets to one place, a 4-year-old kid is home. Dad isn't. So the cop starts talking to the kid, making sure he's okay and such. After a bit of this, kid says to the cop, "Wanna see my dad's secret garden?" Takes him to a closet with a false back, opens it up to see a small pot farm. Guy gets home to a few cop cars and a few charges. Oh man, so was the gardening thing like that dad and son's bonding moment? Poor kid, only wanted to show off the plants. I've had countless times where dudes give consent to search them or the vehicle and they end up having drugs. It baffles me why you would let me search if you don't have to, knowing there's some damn heroin in your car. Hey, it's not like they knew that they can say no to a search. They are stocking heroin, so civil rights isn't really what's on their mind at the moment. Not a cop, but pretty applicable to the thread. When I was in high school, I liked to park in parking spots that cars had parked poorly next to. Just as a f*** you. One time I was at a high school football game, and a Jeep had parked like shit. He was nearly halfway into the spot next to him and parked at an angle. I was driving a 98 Chevy Silverado, big old pickup truck, and I had my brother help guide me into the spot, so I was perfectly in the lines. That made it so the driver door was completely impossible to get in. I took a picture for the novelty of it and went on my way. When I got back to my car, the Jeep was gone and every panel on the passenger side of my car was keyed. There was an officer nearby, so I told him about it and showed him the picture. He told me there's not a lot they could do because there were no witnesses, but he'd give it a shot. He looked up their license plate, called them, and asked them if they had done it. They confessed and ended up having to pay $1,600 in restitution, along with getting a felony. What part of, "Yeah, officer, I did it," sounded smart to them? And to drivers? Yeah, don't park like assholes. Friend was pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt while he was with a few buddies. Gets handed his ticket. Guy in the back seat says, "Am I gonna get a ticket too?" Officer replies, "Well, were you wearing your seatbelt?" No. "Alright, can I see your ID?" Not the brightest fella about it. Hey, give him a break. He just didn't want to feel like he was being left out. Pull over this guy for expired tabs. Ask for his ID and he's feeling around for his wallet. Can't find it. He says, "Ah man, I'm one of you. It's cool." "Oh? What department?" "Oh, actually, I'm a security guard. But same thing. I'm polite." "So, where's your ID?" "Oh, it's in the..." And he motions to the trunk. "It's in the trunk?" "Actually, no. My bull radar is going off." "Okay, want me to get your ID out of the trunk?" "Nah, I don't have it." He starts looking around for another story to use, but now I know I'm supposed to stay out of the trunk. He's also not giving me any more information. No ID? Then I have to take you in and get you fingerprinted. I'm going to get into the trunk one way or another. He's looking like he's lost. I ask him what's in the trunk, but he's not talking anymore. We pull him out and get him in cuffs. Another officer takes him to get ID through fingerprints. Since his car is expired past 6 months, California, we tow the car. In the process of getting ready to tow the car, we need to take a quick inventory. In the trunk was a police uniform with fake patches and a metal badge. No gun, but a duty belt. He also has stacks of child porn. This is the guy who a neighboring city had been looking for months. His MO was to dress as a police officer, talk to kids, and you can figure out the rest. If he just gave me his name, I could have looked up his ID and verified he had one. I'd probably have let him go, but... The neighboring city had zero information as to his name. They only had a vague description of the car and the fact he was posing as a police officer. In fact, what he would do is start talking to a kid in the 9 to 12-year-old range, tell him he has to be taken in for questioning, handcuff the kid, and take him to his car. He was a bad dude. Okay, he's that dumb, but he got that far with his crime? I don't know who to be more frustrated on, the criminal or the neighboring city's police. So this happened a few years ago. I was patrolling with my buddy at night. It was almost the end of our shift. Suddenly, we got an alert that a local nearby gas station had just been robbed, unsuccessfully, and that the suspect was supposed to pass by us in a red car. Indeed, seconds later, we saw a man speeding through the road. Details on the side, we ended up catching him on a dead-end street. When my buddy was cuffing the suspect, I asked the suspect if he had something to do with the robbery. He repeatedly said, "I have never been there. Ask a ginger lady." Turns out the cashier that night was an old lady named Marcy, covering up for her ill daughter, whom would had never been able to identify him since he was wearing a black mask during the robbery, which we never found. Marcy had ginger hair. Fortunately, the suspect was kind enough to inadvertently confess the crime. How could he know the appearance of the cashier if he had never been at the crime scene? The jury thought the same. No way, this is almost too dumb to be true. The absolute best example of this has to be Dennis Rader, aka the BTK killer. For those who are uninformed with BTK, it stood for bind, torture, kill. And he was a notorious serial killer, spanning several decades from 1974 until 1991. And he's responsible for at least 10 murders. Anyway, BTK went silent for a long time, and nobody had heard anything up until 2004, when he started sending in letters to the police and media again. In 2005, he sends a letter to the police asking if he sends in a floppy disk, will they be able to trace it? They tell him no. So the doofus sends them a disk. They are able to recover metadata from a deleted Word document from the disk, which contained his name and the church where he was president of their council. They were easily able to find him after that, and he was arrested and eventually given 10 consecutive life sentences. He probably could have gotten away with all of those murders if he would have just stayed silent. Well, it's a good thing he was cocky. Fellow officers stopped the car for a turn violation. Guy is a wannabe drug dealer who we have seen around the bars before. We are talking to him, asking for permission to search his car. He agrees. I'm bullshitting with him about sports and the weather, and the officer finds a duffel bag. So I joke and say, nothing in there that's dangerous, right? Like bombs or grenades or explosives. He nods and says, yeah, a bunch of dynamite. I'm waiting for him to laugh or smile or shrug or do something that screams, it's a joke! Nothing. I say, I'm going to open the bag and look, okay? Expecting at any moment he will stop me. He doesn't. It was 8 sticks of dynamite he stole from a construction site, which is a different story on itself. If he didn't say anything, I would have ignored the bag thinking it was tools. And like what you thought was in the bag, this guy was a total tool. What is with these criminals though, just confirming things to the cops? Are they doing it for some tough guy points? Is there a contest? Is there a contest I didn't know about? Not that I'll join, just curious. That's all for today, folks. We at AskReddit work really hard to post a video every day. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get notifications of our posts. See you on the next one.